Welcome, friends, to Cat Chats. We are recording this day of November the 5th, 2020, 2 days after the most infamous fraudulent election in the history of the United States and possibly the world. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today, although what we're going to be talking about is related. And we have today with us a good friend and fellow researcher named Jane. And hi there, Jane. Really good to have you with us. So what we're going to be doing
here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today, because you and Rosie Cat both are mothers of daughters.
Yes.
And because both you and Rosie Cat basically are former liberals, as am I, who walked away.
Yeah.
And that has caused some issues that I'm hearing about between you and your relationship, each of you, with your daughters, because you chose to walk away from the scam that has become, that the Democratic Party has become.
Yes.
So the first question for both of you, and let's start maybe with you, Jane.
Okay.
What happened in you that caused you to make such a tectonic shift, and what has been the fallout?
Well, on one level, I believe it began when I understood in totality the corruption of Hillary Clinton. And that was when Bernie Sanders was running for president, and the whole Democratic Party sort of overthrew him. And I started to research. I'd known Hillary Clinton was corrupt, but I didn't know how deep it went and how broad it was.
You used to be a big Bernie supporter.
Yeah, I was a Bernie or bust person. And so when he basically came and said, it's over, climb on board with Hillary, she's great, she's wonderful, I was kind of in shock. So I started to see his insincerity, as well as I started to investigate like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton and the death of Seth Rich. It all came about at the same time. And I realized that the Democratic Party was corrupt. At the same time, they were spouting that Donald Trump, was the orange man, and he was evil, and he was a misogynist, and he was racist. I mean, it was endless. And so I was in a quandary at that point. I no longer felt I was a Democrat. And I wasn't ready to go to the Republican Party because I had been under sort of the brainwashing of the left-wing media. And so I voted for Jill Stein, which was what they call a throwaway vote, but I simply could not vote for Hillary, and I equally wasn't comfortable at that point voting for Trump. So the story of what follows to a certain degree, Mahara, because you had the same experience. I was sitting in my living room watching the results come in for the 2016 election, and it got, the country got redder and redder and redder. And everybody's jaw was dropping because, it was supposedly a shoo-in for Hillary, according to the mainstream media.
Yeah,
and so I was
wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, Hillary was supposed to be elected. Everybody, it's a shoo-in, he'll never win. And so it was jaw-dropping that evening when every state, was red and more. And I was like, is this, am I going colorblind? What's happening? But simultaneous to this, my body reaction was one of, I was feeling uplifted. And then I really felt joyful. And I was like, what was going on? And I had my two older daughters here, at least one of them, or maybe the other was on the phone. As I was going into a state of sort of joy, they were descending into complete grief. and it was sobbing and crying. And like you saw a lot of the left when Hillary did not get in. And I was so, my body was so uplifted in my soul. I went into another room, shut the door, and just jumped up and down with joy, because I didn't want to insult, my daughters and all their friends who were just sobbing their hearts out. And I was like, what is happening to me? I don't know. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the journey, which has gone on increasingly for the last 4 years, and more committed to, I guess, the Republican side. I've never really identified, to a large degree with a party, but I guess you could say I've been leaning Republican, and definitely Trump. So the fallout for anybody who has done that knows it's huge. You become the target of the left, who calls you every name under the book. My two older daughters were in their 30s, and I completely were polarized as far as our political leanings. My youngest daughter was always neutral. She did not take a side. It was not, horrified by Trump, but also truly was horrified by Hillary. And she's always stayed in the middle. I don't know if it's that generation of their 30s. So the fallout was loss of family and friends, becoming the subject or the object of much hate online. I think I was job bombed. I think I lost my job. Things just disintegrated as I embraced the right more and more. As I know Mahara, you've gone through, and I don't know about Elizabeth. So that was the fallout.
Yeah.
Was lost my family, being ostracized.
We've all experienced.
Yeah.
I, not having children, you guys have it up close and personal in a way that I haven't quite experienced yet, except recently being yelled at on the streets of Santa Fe, being called a white racist Nazi bitch, whatever, by some unhinged lunatic. But you guys have it in a different way. So, Rosie Cat. So the question is, what happened in you that had you walk away, shift from where you were, or wake up to something new? And what was the fallout?
Those are really good questions and really big questions, because there's so many different phases in my life where I've gone in and out, meaning I've held my breath and I've gone down really deep, looking through the murky waters for integrity. That just is the word that keeps coming to mind. And truth, which has also become, recently has become kind of a hot wire word, like truth. How the heck do you know what the truth is? Are you telling me the truth? Is that the truth? Lots of things behind that word that can trigger a lot of people. But anyway, for me, as a person in the healing arts, as a body worker, as a labor support doula, as a mother, because you learn a lot of healing when you become a mother, because you're in charge of taking care of your family, and through my association with the media arts as well. So healing arts and media arts, I would say those two avenues together, again, have just kept squishing me up against the wall in the corner, like, what is integral here? Are vaccinations integral? Is media integral? Are those relationships integral? I mean, that's kind of been my lifelong, I would just call it my lifelong search. And granted, I go in and out. I recognize that myself, of periods of time in which my own tectonic shifts are so radical and so painful that I just have to withdraw for a while and give myself time to integrate, because this path of really seeing things for what they are is not an easy path. It requires a certain moral fiber that is it requires a certain moral fiber that allows for example, for you to be called what you were called, Mahara, for you, Jane, to maybe take insults and to be the target of certain people saying certain thing, especially loved ones. It's very, very difficult to kind of take that punch in the stomach. It's like, here we go. Not only a punch in the stomach, but a stab in the back. So overall, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think I've arrived at this place where I'm noticing for my own self, my warrior nature and my ability to take jabs, and then my need to retreat and recover from those jabs. That's just the way that it is for me. I'm not the kind of warrior that can always be out there beating the drum. I've got to find ways that work for me. So I think that's maybe sort of the theme here is standing up for what you really believe is true, or being willing to be an explorer, and not making other people wrong for not being able to do that, not being willing to do that, not being ready to do that, not maybe ever being ready to do that, and taking a little bit of a step back, giving them a little bit more space. For me, giving myself a little bit more space as a warrior during these times, because it's difficult, it's challenging. And finding other people like-minded is also very helpful, very nourishing and refreshing. But for me personally, I need to withdraw a lot. So again, I don't know if that answers your question. I just kind of rambled on there.
Well, yeah, it does. As you've been through big changes in the last 3 years, as we all have, and being a healer, nurturer that you are, these changes that we make, these understandings that we come to of truth are challenging. And I wanted to also mention that Jane has a background in shamanism and actually did a thesis on shamanism. So Jane, you bring that unique aspect to the situation. I'd love to hear a little bit of how that plays in, has played in, is playing in to where you're at now, and with your daughters, who obviously are still, I imagine, on the other side of the great divide that I
Yeah.
call it.
Yes, my older two daughters are. Well, shamanism played a big role in me following my instincts, because that's basically what shamanism is. It's listening to your body knowledge. And your body knowledge is connected to universal consciousness, whereas the mind, the intellect, is sort of just receiving images. And a lot of that is from mainstream media. So if you're just receiving on the intellect, you're going to go into, the state of brainwashing if you're disconnected from your shaman center in your heart. So basically that feeling I got that night was shamanic, in the sense it was body knowledge. It was universal consciousness speaking to me. So if I was to have ignored that, I would have ignored the essence of who I am and said, oh, no, that's not true. That what they're saying, Rachel Maddow is saying is the truth. Whereas my whole body was saying this was divine intervention, that this man was put into office. So it plays a huge role in just being a truth teller and a researcher and an activist. I follow the guidance of my spirit guides, my power animals, which in essence is sort of your own gut instinct. So being shamanic means you're really in your body knowledge and you're really connected to universal consciousness. And it's from those sources that I navigate. So it plays a huge role. And I think both of you are also intuitive, or you also probably would not be on this path if you were, just in your heads. And I am finding, I'm from the East Coast, the Northeast, the academic center of the world. And I'm finding that the most educated people are the ones that are the most brainwashed. And even the Ivy League are even worse. They had Hillary Clinton at their graduation speech, and that was appalling to me that they would have an international criminal and child trafficker. So my regret at never having gone to an Ivy League college was healed. So I'm like, I'm glad I never went, because I might have been completely brainwashed too. So it's interesting that it's the most intellectual people that I know back east that are highly educated that are also the most brainwashed. So you have a lot more power if you are also connected to your soul and your heart, and a lot more resources to gather your information. Most of those people are just, they're taking into their brain MSM, and it's almost hopeless. I shouldn't say that. I think we're going into a new earth vibration and people are going to change. But I presented, as I'm sure all of you people have, a myriad of information, about either Joe Biden, like the Hunter Biden tapes, the negative, and then, or the positive, say the Middle East talks by Trump. And both of them are meaningless. They don't care about the truth anymore. They only care about mainstream media. So, but I keep encouraging.
Are you talking about your daughters specifically?
Well, I'm not talking about them specifically, but they are, of the Northeast. They're very educated. One's getting a PhD. The other is a journalist for a left-wing news source, although she doesn't call it left-wing. She thinks it's moderate. I would include them to a certain degree. Yes.
Fascinating. So do you want to add to that, Rosie Cat? Anything you want to add? You're having some issues with your daughter.
Well, I don't want to just pinpoint it on her, although I recognize that this is the focus of the show. And I don't have 3 children, I have 1 child. And Mahara knows that part of my conundrum with all of this has been, we have very strong and very different opinions, my daughter and and I felt very stressed that if I were to express myself in a certain way, that there was a really good chance that I would jeopardize my relationship with my only child. That was the stress. So I took not only that situation, but several other situations with close friends, with colleagues, people like, who are you going to vote for? What, da, 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 when are you going to vote? Da, da, da. And I just said, you know what? It's my personal choice. I'm just not going to talk about it. And that was the tact I didn't think about taking. I didn't premeditate it, but that was what I chose to do. And I have since listened to many other shows of what to do now related to family and friends in this situation. And actually, a lot of people are taking that tact in our situations where we're basically choosing not to talk politics, like you said with your friend Jane, not to talk politics with our family members or friends because it's so divisive. And I kind of go, ooh, so what does that leave to talk about? The cat. Okay, we'll talk about the cat, because there is, I don't know how to avoid this as a mother. There is a desire for me, there is a desire to maintain a certain connection with my kin, with my daughter. And I want to hear her side. And I did hear some of her side, and I did research for 5 hours, some of what she brought up. And I was able to say back to her, this is what my research uncovered on that particular issue, which one could say, again, fields us back over to the side that we're all collaborating on. So it challenged her. Did she write back? No. Did she respond back? No. Did she call me on my birthday 2 days ago? Yes. And a big topic of the conversation that we had was a cat that has found its way into her life. And so we talk about cats, and I
Totally
go,
relate.
and I go, well, maybe that's what we need to do right now in order to survive these huge differences of opinion or experience that we have, to allow for other conversations to happen, and to stay away from the elephant in the room. Maybe that's one way to navigate. I don't know. As I have experienced in much of my parenting, is I've wung it all along. Like, you can read books and you can talk with people, but pretty much as a parent, even parents, as a parent to adult children, you do what you feel in the moment. And this is what my guidance offered me as a way to remain calm and civil and cool and collected versus confrontive. I didn't want to create violence. I'll duke it out with other people, but I don't feel to duke it out with my daughter. So I'll talk cats with her. So cat chats, perfect.
Yeah.
It's what the hell I'm doing, but it's not. I want to say in some respects it's not ideal, but it's working. Okay. It's
Well, yeah,
until
it's a solution for now.
for now,
Yeah. And I do believe things are going to be changing massively. There's going to be a huge wake up in America because of the obvious fraud of this election and what the information that's coming out. Certainly in my research is that the Democrats have fallen into a massive trap. It's a huge sting operation, and all of the fraud is going to be exposed. And when the whole country finds this out, things may change a little. But there's another question that I'm thinking after you guys have been talking. It's about the education system, and we've actually we did a show on that, on the education system, because I have two other friends also with daughters who are in this same pickle. And I saw one of them yesterday, and she said, it's the more education they have, it seems the more they are brainwashed. And her daughter went to Sarah Lawrence, one of the elite schools, and is completely bought into the narrative of the mainstream media. So what do you think? So Jane, do you think the older generation, our generation, the mothers, the grandmothers, have more connection with intuition, gut instinct, common
Well,
sense?
yes, because we didn't have the technology that the kids have now. The technology has taken them into their heads, the iPhones and Facebook and Instagram. So we naturally were more in touch with ourselves because that's the major way we navigated, was using our senses. And so when something came along that was not right, I think there was a faster reaction. But if you're in your head all the time, which is where technology brings you, for better or for worse, your response time is going to be a lot slower, if ever, because you're believing everything that's coming into your head. So I think definitely, and probably for other reasons as well. I will say though that my daughter in her 20s, she hated school, could never get her to go to school, high school, anything. She finally ended up taking courses wherever she felt like. And then she got her GED and went to Lesley University in Cambridge last year, which has changed dramatically. They've become completely politically correct. And she fought back when they started having Indians coming and saying, you people are terrible and you should hate yourself. She goes, no, I'm not, their whole thing was about how terrible all the white people were and you should be doing penance. And she fought back. She didn't buy it. And also because she was feminine, in the traditional sense, and she wasn't, I don't know what the word is, masculine feminine. she was also berated for that. So she does not fall into the same category as my older daughters. And I don't know if it was Common Core that my older daughters, or because my daughter would not go to high school, she just blatantly felt it was repelled, that she didn't buy into something. And so she fought, and she's glad to be gone from Leslie because she was constantly fighting to hold her ground there. And she's also the one, I think she actually is a Trump supporter, but she didn't vote because of so much pressure from her friends. They're all liberals here in Santa Fe. But she keeps asking me, you know, what's the latest on Trump? What's the latest on Trump? I think she actually is a Trump supporter. So, and it may be that she didn't go to school, basically, you know, that she wasn't brainwashed.
That's fascinating. I'm so
Yeah,
glad
it is.
she stood up for herself at Leslie. I mean,
She did. She really, and she stood up and spoke out, you know, about that she was, you know, being degraded for being white. And they would have, you know, Black people come and Indian and, you know, saying how, you know, we had destroyed them, and she fought back.
yeah, and this is what is going on in all the colleges now and schools.
Yeah.
The shaming of white people and the blatant racism. I call it racism when
It
you're
is racism.
yeah
She
when
fought back against racism the whole time she was there at Leslie for a whole
yeah,
year,
and
all alone.
they call themselves the party of love and tolerance.
Yeah,
And
I know.
they're not racist. That's all I see is
Is
racism.
racism and
Yeah.
hatred and violence. It's very ironic.
Well, it's a beautiful and pivotal time in history for us as women, since we are
Mhm.
talking about women and daughters, mothers. You know, my long-term wish is that at some point, you know, future generations will say, yeah, my great 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 grandma
Yeah.
Rose, she stood up for liberty, justice, and peace for all. Yeah, she spoke out. You know, rather than that great great grandma Rose who was a couch potato and did nothing. So that's kind of my hope. But you know, our daughters and we as women basically were not taught to speak out, to do things differently. We were taught to follow the mainstream, stay quiet. At least my generations, my lineage, we were taught to survive by staying quiet. Well, we're doing it a little bit differently this time. And, you know, there's that unique dynamic of the mother and the daughter, too, that I do think we've got to give our daughters room
Yeah.
to experience their own lives in their own
Yep.
ways. And our wisdom, our knowledge and experience to create the wisdom that we have is through our knowledge and experience. And we need to give them their own, you know, that that experience of falling and scraping their own knees.
It's interesting. It's sort of, I've come full circle. I remember fighting against my father, who was a Republican, and I was a Democrat in the 60s and all about, you know, free sex and rock and roll. And he was a Republican, and I thought he was staunchy and stiff. And so now it's sort of coming around, you know, now I'm the Republican and my daughters are the, don't be so mean. And, you know, it's really interesting how it's come full circle for me.
Me too, Jane. I grew up in a Republican.
You know what?
Well, yeah, I was in England, so my mother was Republican. But anyway, same kind of thing. But you know what I'm seeing now is that I was also influenced by a psyop. That what we happened with us in the 60s,
Mhm.
we were being brainwashed big time.
Planned Parenthood and all of
I
that.
see it now so clearly.
Me
And it
too.
came through the music, it came through the media, it came, you know, in the same way. But we didn't. I love your point about the media now and the phones and the addiction to media.
Which
And
is a
so
mental thing. You're not feeling people. You're not,
exactly, the young
it's
people are
all
being
mind.
taught to. They're being taught to go with the program, thinking for yourselves has become something like from ancient history.
It's not PC.
Not
Mm.
PC, no.
So
I did want to
maybe
say with my older daughters, we've come to common ground, places we can talk and where we can't, because these are the relationships that are going to go on forever, is with our family. So we have to find some common ground.
I could argue that.
Yeah, we found some places
I
we
mean,
can talk and places we can't to
that's
preserve
nice.
the relationship.
No. That's, I think that's important. And if it's only temporary for right now to talk about
Yeah,
the fluffier things, the non-confrontational things, maybe we do allow that to be able to preserve our relationships. And that's important. Family's important.
Hope you liked our cat chats today. Our guest Jane has a YouTube channel, which is Bethesda Star. Bethesda, Bethesda. Remember, breathe deep, connect with nature, connect with friends. Keep your vibe high. We're going through the eye of the needle. Much love, and remember to like and subscribe. Bye.